Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze how Mason Mount and Jorginho played a key role in Chelsea's 2-1 win over Leicester City. So when we break down the game and we do look at the board, we witness both sides starting in a three-man backline, and the only difference was how both managers looked to shape their overall attack. You had Leicester City in more of a 3-4-1-2 with Maddison operating as a number 10 just in behind Jose Perez and Vardy, whereas Chelsea initially started in more of a 3-4-3 with Mason Mount and Pulisic in wider areas while Timo Werner was central. Therefore, with both sides adopting similar systems, it was no surprise that they both looked to press higher up the pitch man v man. First, we'll focus on Chelsea, and their pressing should have been simple. We should have seen Mount, Werner, and Pulisic closing down the center backs, Chilwell and Azpilicueta pushing higher up the pitch to close down Thomas and Albrighton. However, the issue that you would encounter here is how to deal with Maddison, because what you have at the back is 3v2 against Jose Perez and Vardy, but with Maddison in deeper positions, you would need one of the center backs to step forward to close him down. Because with Maddison dropping off deeper or shifting laterally out into the wider areas, it would allow him to receive the ball in pockets of space to then look to play in Jose Perez and Vardy breaking in behind. So the manner in which Chelsea looked to cope with this threat was that they had Jorginho sitting deeper to track the movement of Maddison, and then they'd have their wider players tucking in central to close down Tielemans or Ndidi. For example, if the ball was shifted out to the right-hand side, you'd see Chelsea closing down Soyuncu, Fofana, Ndidi, and Thomas, and then you'd have Mount shifting across to close down Tielemans. If the ball was shifted out to Castagna, then you would have Mount stepping forward to close him down, and you'd see Rudiger stepping forward to close down Tielemans. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, if you had Castagna and Fofana closed down by Werner and Mount, then you would see Conte stepping towards Tielemans and Pulisic dropping off deeper to close down Ndidi. Chelsea's press was relatively successful in that opening half, as you could witness occasions where Jorginho was tracking the movement of Maddison to ensure that he couldn't get on the ball with time and space to play in Jose Perez or Vardy. And that ultimately ensured that Chelsea did have that 3v2 advantage up front, and with the wingbacks pushing higher up the pitch, that does leave space in the channels for Jose Perez or Vardy to break into, but Rudiger and James did a good job with their individual battles, and when they needed help from Thiago Silva, he swept up comfortably. Meanwhile, when we focus on Leicester's pressing, what we ended up seeing was that the front two would close down Rudiger and Thiago Silva, and then Maddison would shift across to close down Reece James. Albrighton and Thomas closed down the wingbacks, and then what you should see is Tielemans and Ndidi stepping forward to close down Jorginho and Conte. However, while Leicester City's high press should have presented several issues for Chelsea's build-up play, it was Chelsea's front three, specifically Mason Mount and Jorginho, who played a key role in bypassing that press. One of the issues that Leicester encountered was that their back three wasn't willing to stick tight to Mount, Werner, and Pulisic due to the threat of Chelsea in behind, especially if they are adopting a high line. And then it was the issue of dealing with Jorginho with their press. Tielemans and Ndidi looked to close down Conte and Jorginho higher up the pitch. Chelsea's front three would simply drop off the center backs into pockets of space in between the lines to create passing outlets, and it was Leicester's back three who were unwilling to track their markers. That ultimately resulted in Tielemans and Ndidi holding their position to cut off the passing lanes into Chelsea's front three. Leicester City's disjointed pressing did allow Jorginho to dominate the game, because with Tielemans and Ndidi now forced to hold their position, Jorginho was simply dropping off into deep positions to get on the ball, and he was creating 4v3 overloads, and that resulted in some of Chelsea's best chances in that opening half. Initially, we see Rudiger carrying the ball across Jose Perez, with Werner dropping off Fofana into the halfway circle, and Mount ahead of Castagna in space. Rudiger ends up sliding the ball to Werner in that space, and what we end up seeing is that he drags out Fofana the halfway line with Maddison stepping late, and Jorginho dropping off deeper away from Ndidi to get on the ball. James slides it across Maddison for Jorginho, and that's where you see Conte looking to shift laterally towards the right of Ndidi near Tielemans, and Jorginho with time and space to pick out a marker. The Italian ends up playing the ball across Ndidi for Pulisic dropping off Soyuncu, and that's where you see Conte goal side of Tielemans, who is shifting across to provide cover, and it allows Pulisic to poke the ball into Conte's path, and he takes the ball across Soyuncu, and that results in Fofana now being the cover man. Conte ends up carrying that ball towards right half space, and Fofana does well to cut off the crossing angle towards Werner at the back post, and it forces Conte to fire a low effort on goal that's saved by Schmeichel. Seconds later, it's Jorginho on the ball in Leicester's third ahead of Ndidi and Maddison, and that's where you see Pulisic dropping off Soyuncu, with the center back not looking to step forward to apply pressure. When Pulisic receives the ball, he's able to freely turn to run at the Leicester backline, and you have Soyuncu and Thomas ahead of him, and Azpilicueta at the edge of the box calling for the ball. Pulisic holds off Ndidi's pressure, and he ends up sliding it across Thomas for Azpilicueta, and that's where you could see the passing lane for Pulisic, who is making that run towards the 6-yard box. But when Azpilicueta plays a first-time ball through the 6-yard area, it bypasses Pulisic and Werner. The other alternative for Leicester would be to drop off into a 5-4-1. It would ensure that the wingbacks would be pegged back, but what you could do is have a compact midfield with Maddison and Ayoze Perez tucking in central and only closing down Rudiger and James if they stepped in towards their half. That would see Vardy dealing with Jorginho, and then you could have Tielemans or Ndidi close down Conte, and that would leave a spare midfielder to help out the center backs with Werner, Mount, and Pulisic dropping off deeper. On the other hand, if Leicester City's back three did close down Chelsea's front three, then the Blues struggled to create chances. This forced Tuchel to shift the system to match Leicester, and that's where we ended up seeing Mason Mount play the number 10 role. This was key because with Jorginho having time and space to get on the ball, he was able to find Mason Mount, or it was down to Rudiger and James playing passes beyond Ayoze Perez and Maddison, who were struggling to get across to close them down. The slight system modification did follow the natural flow of the game, because when Mount was dropping off into these central positions, Werner was spinning towards Castagna to ensure that he was occupying the right center back, and that ensured that he couldn't step forward to close down Mount. And then when Mount received the ball, now you had runners in Pulisic and Werner, and then Chilwell, Azpilicueta, and Conte were also pushing forward. Initially, we witnessed Jorginho on the ball ahead of Maddison and Tielemans, with Mount dropping freely in towards the halfway circle. Jorginho splits both Leicester City players for Mount, and when he turns with the ball freely, he has Pulisic making a run between Thomas and Soyuncu, and Werner running in between Castagna and Albrighton. Mount opts to play the ball between Soyuncu and Thomas for Pulisic, and Pulisic now has the option to play a first-time ball across the center backs for Werner at the far post, but he opts to take on Soyuncu 1v1 into right half space, and he fails to beat the Leicester City center back. There was a time where we witnessed Rudiger being pressed by Ayoze Perez, and Mason Mount drifting laterally in space ahead of Castagna. When Rudiger slides the ball out to Chilwell, it pulls out Albrighton, but look at Werner occupying Castagna, and neither Tielemans nor Ndidi tracking the movement of Mount. Chilwell slides the ball first time across Albrighton for Mason Mount, and that's where you witness the Chelsea left wing back running off Albrighton down the touchline, and Werner occupying Castagna, which allows Mount to break forward at the Leicester City backline. Unfortunately for Chelsea, while Mount should be creating a chance, initially he's closed down by 4 Leicester City players, and he plays a tame effort at Soyuncu, but he's able to recover the loose ball, and it places him in a position where he's once again closed down by several Leicester City players, and he forces a save out of Schmeichel. Initially, we witnessed Leicester City's press with Thomas stepping late towards Azpilicueta, and Jorginho shifting free laterally with neither Vardy or the midfield duo closing him down. When Azpilicueta plays the ball to Jorginho, you witness neither Tielemans or Ndidi step forward to apply pressure, Pulisic dropping deeper to pull out Fofana, and Werner looking to run across Castagna into the space. Jorginho slides the ball across Pulisic and Fofana for Werner, and he should be carrying that ball towards goal to get into a 1v1 with Schmeichel, but he allows Castagna to get across by hesitating to take his first touch, and that results in Werner taking the ball into right half space and having a shot blocked by the right center back. While the second half didn't present a significant tactical shift, we did witness both managers looking to shut down the opposing side's key strengths. When Chelsea was pressing high, they were tight on Maddison when he dropped off deeper, specifically Rudiger and James. And then when we look to Leicester City, what we ended up seeing was that they were looking to press high as well, but they had Tielemans and Ndidi now stepping towards Kovacic and Jorginho. The sole intention of Rodgers' press was to ensure that Chelsea could make mistakes around the box, and we witnessed that in Leicester City's sole goal of the game. But it was also to ensure that Jorginho couldn't create that 4v3 overload at the back, and to deny Mason Mount the service in between the lines. However, although Leicester City were culpable for their downfall, Mason Mount also played a key role in the build-up to both goals. Here we witness Kovacic on the ball ahead of Ndidi, Vardy sitting on Jorginho, but Tielemans not tracking the movement of Mason Mount in the halfway circle. Kovacic ends up sliding the ball across the Leicester City midfield for Mount, who lets the ball roll across his body, and while he has Werner and Pulisic breaking towards the box centrally, he ends up sliding the ball across Albrighton for Chilwell, and that results in the corner kick that Rudiger converted. And then we witness Mount receiving the ball on the outside of Tielemans, pulling out Albrighton, while Werner's running across Fofana, and Castagna has to shift across to Chilwell. When Mount pushes forward, you witness Castagna shifting across towards the Chelsea left wing back, and because Tielemans isn't tight, Mount is able to slide the ball across Albrighton for Werner's run. Werner does place himself in a position where he's able to spin towards left half space across Fofana, but while the Leicester City center back does well to force Werner towards the left touchline, he unfortunately concedes a foul with cover pressure from Castagna, and that results in Jorginho's winner. So as you can see, the movement of Chelsea's front three combined with Jorginho creating overloads in deeper midfield positions ensured that Chelsea were able to dominate Leicester City and create several issues for Brendan Rodgers' 3-4-1-2.